Welcome to Unleashed. And don't forget to join us on Patreon for early access and exclusive content.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unleashed. I'm James. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you've had a great week. We're talking Star Wars today, as we do all the time on the Rebel Scum podcast. If you're new to the channel, just subscribe. If you like the video, thumbs up. If you don't like it, thumbs down. Everything you do from this point forward helps us out. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being here, listening. Join the conversation. Leave a comment down below. If you're in the live chat, leave a comment in the live chat. I want to hear what you have to say. We want to communicate. We have a good time talking about Star Wars. I don't like to say we're one of the positive Star Wars podcasts. I don't think there's any, it doesn't matter if you're positive, negative. That's not the point of this. Point is to be honest about what you're talking about and genuine. And that's what we're going to do here. And that's what I want to do. And I want to talk a little bit about Star Wars and where it is right now. And can it go back to what it was? And all of this depends on, as Obi-Wan would say, a certain point of view. And that would be your point of view. If you are loving Star Wars right now, you don't need to go back to the glory days of the past, because you're in the glory days right now. In the future, you're living in the present. You're living the glory days. If you're not happy with what's going on, maybe you do want to see it go back, or maybe you're just over Star Wars altogether. And if that's the case, I don't know why you're here, but thanks for being here. So there's a lot of variables that go into the thought of, can we go back to what Star Wars was and what was Star Wars, and can we get there? And I'm going to take it from my perspective, because I'm the one talking and I'm in front of you right now, and that's where I'm going to go with this. So can Star Wars go back to the glory days? So what are the glory days, and how are we not in the glory days? Because from one angle, when you look at it, we could be in the glory days of Star Wars right now. We're getting TV series, streaming series, right? We're getting shows on our television, every quarter, every 2 quarters, whatever it is, twice a year, we're getting shows on there. We haven't got a movie in a while, but there's a couple movies in the works, though. There always are, and they never seem to come to fruition. But the Rey movie seems to be something. Maybe Mando and Grogu's 100% coming our way, which we've already got 3 seasons of The Mandalorian under our belts. So we've gotten Star Wars. We've gotten, since Disney acquired Lucasfilm, we've had 2 less movies made than the entirety of George Lucas owning Lucasfilm. For better or for worse, that's what I'm saying. So I want to take it from my angle, where we've gotten all of this wonderful stuff. And look, some of it has obviously been better than others. Some people have appreciated, some not so much, others, whatever. And that's, I think the more you get from a product, the more that's going to happen, right? It's inevitable. At some point, you're going to say, you know what, I loved X, not so crazy about Y. And that's just how it's going to work, because you're going to get so much. It's going to happen. Now, the quality could be going down. The quality could be going up. I found the quality. I think the biggest issue I'm having with Star Wars at the moment, and we talked about this on Monday's show, is the lack of almost direction that we see from Star Wars, where it's kind of like, the Acolyte's cool and it kind of fits into the High Republic timeline, which they've been doing with the books. And I know a couple people who have been reading the books. I know people have been enjoying the books, but I don't think the books have been selling crazy numbers necessarily. Because I did, before I went on here, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I did kind of check to see how they were doing, and they were like, middling numbers, especially, you kind of want something bigger, I think. But that was kind of neat. But also, it's leading into the prequels, which we have. And when it ended, and so spoilers, I guess, for everything Star Wars, if you haven't figured it out. And spoilers for Star Wars from 1977 to 2024. And the way it ended, it kind of was like, what was the point? And I was really like, what was the point? It was almost like, okay, we've set up the next step now. And that's really been an issue with, I think Mandalorian season 3, the episodes were setting up the next issue. And then, a lot of people didn't seem to enjoy the series, but at least it kind of concluded at the end. Like, it felt like this is the ending now. Ahsoka, on the other hand, didn't have an ending. It was even more open, I would suggest, than the Acolyte. The Acolyte kind of ended, and then it was like, but what was the point? The point was the future. So yeah, Ahsoka just stopped. It was just like, hey, this is a show, and we're gonna end up exactly where we started. Only the bodies are gonna swap. We're gonna swap places, basically. That's it. Boba Fett, people didn't like Boba Fett. I quite enjoyed it, but that had an ending as well. Obi-Wan Kenobi had an ending. And Mando season 1 and 2. And am I forgetting? Oh, Andor. Andor is a completely different beast. It had 12 episodes. It also cost way too much money. I think the episodes were a little bit longer. But it ended, and then it kind of said, oh, and also season 2 is coming. But the thing that was different about that versus Ahsoka and Acolyte is we knew going into Andor season 1 that we were getting Andor season 2. And I think when you get that promise, when you have that understanding, I think you can accept the ending a little bit more. And I think they also did a great job of wrapping up the story that we were getting in season 1 and then propelling it into season 2. I think they did a great job of that. I don't think the other shows have succeeded so much. Mando season 1, was its own thing. Mando season 2, like Mando season 1 and 2 both ended. And my stance on Mandalorian is when Mando season 2 ends, the Mando Grogu story kind of ended. Like that was where I was. I was like, okay, so and then the Mando season 3 was we're watching the Mandalore planet story unfold, and Mando and Grogu just happened to be a part of that story. So that's kind of how I always kind of viewed it because it kind of ended right. He goes with Luke. You're like, okay, that's fine. And then he couldn't stay with Luke because he's Grogu. We have to see this. But anyway, this is another thing. So the past glory, the past glory. Look, you had 3 movies, the original trilogy, 1, 2, and 3. I love Return of the Jedi, but I know that's the one that people seem to think ruins Star Wars at this point. Like people are like, Return of the Jedi had the Ewoks and a lot of aliens, and it kind of took itself a little less seriously than the first 2. Empire takes itself very seriously. I would even argue Andor is so similar to Empire in tone that could be what hurts Star Wars is that they're it's I don't know how to say it without sounding stupid, but like they're great. Obviously, Empire Strikes Back is probably the best Star Wars movie we've gotten. Andor is probably the best Star Wars show we've gotten. Whether or not they're your favorites, that's a completely different argument. But just looking at them surface, like neither one of them are necessarily my favorite. Like I said, Return of the Jedi is my favorite, but I think they're probably the best at what they do in terms of everything around it and whatnot. But Return of the Jedi is the one that people say kind of ruined it. So when you go back to past glory, you going back to A New Hope, or you're going back to Empire. And Empire, I argue, almost ruined a lot of Star Wars because of the Darth Vader reveal at the end. Once that Vader reveal happened, everyone's been obsessed with needing a twist in Star Wars. And then Return of the Jedi, we got the sisters and whatnot. And then, the prequels, we didn't get too many twists. If you don't know it's going to be Sheevy P as Palpatine, I guess that's a twist. Anakin turns to the dark side. If you're not, there's no real twist, but everybody was kind of waiting for one. And then when the sequels came, it's like, gotta be a twist, gotta be a twist, gotta be a twist. And there weren't really any twists. And then when the twist comes that she's a Palpatine, the problem with that one is, I think everybody can agree that the problem with the Palpatine one, aside from what your personal thoughts are, is there's no thought or plan into any of it. So it was just kind of like they just did it for the shock value. Whereas, the Luke, I am, the no, I am your father line, it's definitely for shock value, but also there's some thought put into it, right? That adds so much more weight to everything you see after that. And then when you think about it and rewatch it again, it gives so much more weight to everything that comes before it as well. So I think that's where it works. And I think the way to get back to this glory days really of Star Wars is, instead of just like throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, is take a small hiatus. Take it, or you know what? Use your time with Mando and Grogu. Focus on Mando and Grogu, and you got Andor season 2. Focus on those, and then sit down and try to figure out why you are making Star Wars movies and shows, and why. And if you want, and if you want them all to tie together, which they said they were, then make them all tie together. But tell me, well, why am I watching these? Because right now, if I think of Ahsoka, and let's say for argument's sake that, and I know, and if Ahsoka is your favorite show, I don't want to disparage you, but let's just say Ahsoka's perfect from start to finish. Why are we watching Ahsoka? Why are we watching Ahsoka? it takes place in a timeline that we already kind of knows where it leads to. I mean, this could even go for Mandalorian or any of these things, but we know where it's leading to. We know Snoke's coming. We know Sheevy P's returning. We know Kylo Ren is on the verge of whatever. Like, we know that's all coming. So why am I watching Ahsoka? It's not going to change any of that. And that's not, and look, that's a negative, what I'm saying, but it's not a negative if you have a purpose for it. You're like, well, it's leading to X, which doesn't affect this, or it goes parallel to it. That's great, but we don't know what's happening. And at this point in time, I don't trust that anybody knows what's happening. That's the issue right now. Is like, I watch The Acolyte, I watch Ahsoka, I watch Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is, and Boba Fett are both kind of like whatever. They're one-offs. They're these are just separate stories, one-offs, miniseries, whatever. Like, that's it. Their story, beginning, middle, end, done. That's fine. But you watch these things, and I just look at them and I enjoy what I enjoy, and I don't enjoy what I don't enjoy. But then it's, why am I sitting here watching these shows that ultimately seem to have no direction? And that is when I think back to the sequel trilogy, when I left the theater on a lot, probably 2 or 3 of them. It was the same type of thing. Solo kind of felt that way, and I love Solo. I'm on here, like, I know Solo, I think, ranks last on our Ranking Star Wars we do every New Year's Day on the channel. We combine a list of like 60 lists or something, and we rank them based on where everybody puts them. And usually, I think Solo and Attack of the Clones fight for that last spot. And I love Solo. It's never last on my list, but I love it. But when it's all said and done, like, why did I just watch that? And and that movie has a moment which speaks to this issue with Darth Maul at the end, and the interviews with Ron Howard afterwards were like, well, he's like, we needed somebody for the end, and I had a list, and I gave them to, I think, his son, and his son was like, oh, Darth Maul's cool, and so they threw Darth Maul in there. And all the Rebels fans know that Darth Maul is going to get killed in Rebels. Fans that, people that don't watch, they're just like, well, and people who don't watch Rebels and don't watch Clone Wars, like, isn't Darth Maul dead? How did he come back? Which is an intriguing question, and actually not a bad question to ask. If you ask, how did Darth Maul come back, you could tell people, well, watch the cartoon, or you could continue Darth Maul's story in some capacity. Now, of course, Solo was a box office failure. I don't think they are going to ever plan on bringing anything from that back in anything other than maybe a book and comic. I think they did do like a Kira comic. Kira's an interesting character as well. So, but that's the issue, right? It's like they just threw Darth Maul in because it was cool. But if you would say, we're throwing Darth Maul in because blah, 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 you can go for it. Now they have Disney Plus. It might be easier in the future. We're doing Darth Maul. We could do the series. Like you hear Giancarlo Esposito talk about how he's playing the character in the MCU, and then they're going to do like a show or something after. And there's a plan. I don't get the sense of any of that with anything I watch with Star Wars right now. And that's where the glory days comes from. Is what was the glory days? The glory days was the original trilogy is 1, 2, and 3. And okay, George Lucas says it was planned out. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it didn't really matter because there was no history of Star Wars. It was brand new from 77 to 83. It's completely new. Nothing that happens has any consequence of anything else that happens in that universe. And then you bring on the prequels, and the prequels does have some consequence because now you have the original trilogy, which takes place obviously after, but then you have the books. And so Lucas was smart enough to come out and be like, I'm not paying attention to those. I'm going to do my own thing. And so he did his own thing, but he knew obviously it was going to start with the kid, and he knew it was going to end with Darth Vader and with the rise of the Empire and with the Emperor coming in, and he knew the Jedi were going to get wiped out. So he had that and he had that, and it was how he got there. He could do whatever he wanted. The sequel trilogy, and I know people love Force Awakens. People, and then The Last Jedi is a movie that I don't, people love, people don't love. And then The Rise of Skywalker is one that I think most people really think is probably top 4 movie of all time. But obviously they didn't have any of that. They just were like, hey, we're going to make a trilogy. Okay, what's it about? Well, I don't know. We'll figure out the first one. They did the first one, and the second one was The Last Jedi. The failings, I believe, of The Last Jedi so honestly, are mostly from. It was based on the Force Awakens script, not the finished movie, because the finished movie wasn't ready until really close to when they started shooting, so they wouldn't have time to. So there's a lot of things there, and I think that was a problem. Then the Rise of Skywalker, obviously, you fire the director and writer, and then you bring in J.J. Abrams back, and J.J. Abrams wants to undo the things that were done, that were undone from his movie, bring them back. So there's a whole lot of issues there. I think really the filmmaking on that was a lot of oil and water. Whether you like oil or water better, that's what you probably liked in this one. So, you have that. And then again with the shows, Mando comes out and it kicks butt. Everyone loves Mando. They pretty much won the fan base back after The Last Jedi split it. And I was like, Mando's a lot of fun. I like Mando. Right? Skywalker comes, people hate it, whatever. And then, but Mando's still there. And then they're like, Mando season 2 is coming. You're like, all right. And then Bob Iger said something that I think really kind of irked people. He's like, we're going to have characters come in and they're going to get spinoffs. And I was like, why did you had a good thing going. We all loved Quill. You killed him. We all loved him. We all loved IG 11. Is it 11 or 80? The one that's not an Empire. We all loved that droid. You blew him up, which is fine. It's great. You have to have that. I love that. And now you're going to have characters come in and they're going to have spinoffs. Okay, fine. But then, why? But then, obviously the Gina Carano thing happened, and then that character's not getting spun off anymore. And then you have Bo-Katan. I don't know. That was the plan on being a spinoff because season 3 kind of felt like it'd be the Bo-Katan spinoff. Like I said, like it was a separate thing from Mando season 1 and 2 because I felt like there's the storyline and those ended. Now we go to Bo-Katan. There's Axe Woves, I guess, and there's so there's. I don't know who they were going for really on that. I know we're supposed to get Rangers of the New Republic, and then when Gina Carano got axed, that got axed, which is a weird thing for me also because I think you could have used anybody in that. So it just feels like the direction isn't there, and it hasn't been there since they purchased it. It's just kind of been like, get Star Wars out. People want to watch Star Wars, and I think that might have been true in 1977, might have been true in 1980, maybe in 83. But I think, once like Heir to the Empire happens, right? Once you have the Thrawn trilogy coming, once you have the books coming, and the books are all, like, I mean, like in a vacuum, like those books are planned. Once you have things like that, all of a sudden the world is growing. It's expanding greatly. And now fans are more sophisticated and more educated, and they want to see what's happening. And and you go in, and then you come in and you own Marvel, and the MCU was only like 4 years old by the time of this merger, but it already had its feet firmly planted. And it was like, okay, they had a couple downers, a couple movies that I didn't think were great in the MCU, but you could see there was a direction, right? They were leading to the Avengers, and Star Wars was leading to an Avengers, but they started with the Avengers. A New Hope is the Avengers, right? So they were starting there, and they kind of were, Rogue One's great, Solo I think is great, but they're kind of misplaced also. Like, why do we, like, there was no plan, no purpose for it to happen. And so I'm hoping, we're getting the Mando and Grogu movie. I don't know what it is. If it's a one-off, that's fine too. It could fit in with the Rogue One and Solo and just be, it is what it is. And it's the cherry on the top of the Mando show and whatever, and the characters. But you have the Rey movie that may or may not happen, and I'm not completely convinced it will, but it might. So you have the Rey movie, they're planning on that, and they're, new Jedi Order, Rey's going to train Jedi, it's going to be a lot of fun, people are going to love it, but is there a purpose for it? And I hope they're planning on just making one good movie, but I'm also hoping they have an idea of, if we do a sequel, it will be this. If we do a sequel, it will be that. You know how it drives me nuts when I watch a terrible movie and the filmmakers are ecstatic about their movie and they're like, we have ideas for sequels and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And the movie's horrible. And I feel bad because obviously the filmmakers, everybody working on it, loved what they were doing. They were passionate about it. And they loved it so much they had thoughts for more to come. And then you get movies that are good or that are basically guaranteed a sequel, and there's no thought of a sequel. They're like, well, yeah, maybe we'll do it. Like, what? It's Star Wars. And call it the Rey movie episode 10. Just call it episode 10 and continue on. Continue on. Just keep going. Don't don't mess around with a good thing. You've got a good thing going. Star Wars is a good thing. It's had its stumbling blocks. It's messed up a few times. It's not perfect. People hate it online, whatever, but it's a good thing. People are obsessed with Star Wars. Always, because of the original movies, because of the books, because of the prequels, because of the sequels, because of maybe the video games, but probably not, because they really screwed the pooch on that one. And maybe because of the animated stuff. But people love Star Wars and people are obsessed with Star Wars, and that's not going to change unless you keep giving content. I don't want to say content, unless you keep giving us stories that are meaningless, that have no depth, and that stop short. Then people will get off of the train and they'll find another train and they'll get on that train. The Rebel Moon train, it looked like the Rebel Moon train was ready for everybody to get on, and then that train might have had that train ended up being what it was. But so I think it's easy to get back to whatever the glory days were, if you agree or disagree with that terminology. I think you just you have the Mando, you have Andor. Just take a breath. Just take a breath and sit down and say, hey, what are we doing with our product? What is Star Wars about? Because action figures aren't doing it anymore. Adults spend more money on action figures than kids. And I get it. Like, if my kid is ever like, hey, I want an action figure, and I go to the store and I see the price, then I'm like, well, you're not going to play with that. Because they're too expensive. They're not toys anymore. They're collectibles. That's what they are. That's what they're mass produced for. And people are, for whatever reason, okay with it. So I guess I should be too. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you're not going to get the action figures. So figure out your plan. Sit down. Stretch it all out. And once you say, we have a plan, this is our plan. I'm not saying that, Andor has to connect to Kenobi, has to connect to Mando, has to connect to Ahsoka, but I'm just saying, why are you making the Acolyte? What's your end game with the Acolyte? What is the purpose of me? Because when you read a book, usually when you read because I compare these like Disney Plus shows to the old Legends novels, right? That they're kind of, to me, they're like the same thing. They're side stories in Star Wars. But the novels all kind of like ended, and you're like, well, that was a good little story. I'm glad I read that, or that sucked at it. But the shows, they kind of just go, well, why am I watching that show? And just let me know why I'm watching it. Give me a reason to watch it. That's it. Mando had a reason. Like Mando season 1 had a reason. It was, you got to save Grogu. And it was very simple. It doesn't have to be universe saving, galaxy saving, whatever. It can just be like, this 50-year-old baby needs to be rescued. And you need to find, or not rescued. And we have a bounty on this 50-year-old baby. You have to bring it to the client. And then there's the moral dilemma. And that's it. But that was solid, right? We knew that, and it ended, and we're like, we're happy. We got what we wanted. We got, because we were told, we're like, this is what you're getting, and we knew what it was. And then that's, for me, that's what Star Wars needs. Is, you can complain about the writing, the acting, the music, the diversity, I mean, women probably shouldn't lead Star Wars. Sorry, can't even say all this straight face. Like, you can complain about everything, but none of that matters if you're fine with, if the tale being told, the tale being presented to you is digestible and you're happy with it, then you're okay with it. And that's how I feel. I've just sit down, figure out what's going on. Because I don't think, maybe they're doing that. And if they are, thank you. But I up to this point, I don't believe they have. I don't have the confidence that they have. And, I think it's definitely hurt Star Wars in some cases. It's lost some fans. I think the biggest thing, though, aside from the hurting the fans and then losing the fans, is it's is it still a respectable franchise? Because, like I said, everybody loves Star Wars, right? You put on TVs, there's always a Star Wars reference. Somebody always has a Star Wars reference. Is it getting too diluted now? And is it getting diluted by inconsequential material that will kind of made it fade into nothing. I think, referencing the Force and Yoda will always be there, but I don't know. It's a tricky time, tricky place. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm hopeful that they figure it out and that the future of Star Wars is bright, but we will not know for quite some time. And well, I'm getting older. But we'll figure it out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below or on that live chat. Like I said, give us a like and a subscribe. Thank you guys so much for spending like a half hour, whatever it's been, with me on your Friday. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. May the force of others be with you.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.